Apologies for starting. Sorry, okay, just want to confirm the recording. Apologies for starting slightly late this evening, but welcome to everyone to what I hope is the last Zoom meeting of this year. And I especially want to welcome new members, Debbie Parsons, Robin Cowie, Julia Button, and Ray Potter. Next month, we plan to be back at the Alphen Hall for our AGM, end of year party, and our Founders Trophy competition. Please note there is a change to our usual date, and this will now be held on Thursday, the 2nd of December. We will be sending out an email to remind you of the date change, the catering arrangements, and all the details about the competition closer to the time. So please read your emails and your newsletter for upcoming events. And then back to tonight. It's a very warm welcome to Jenny Parsons. Jenny's going to chat to us about her plein air paintings and her outdoor painting practice. Jenny graduated in 1988 with a higher diploma in fine art from the Durban University of Technology, was head of the fine art department at Ruth Prowse College of Art and Design, and in 2014 obtained a postgraduate diploma from the Michaelis School of Fine Art at UCT, which she passed with distinction. She's been working as a full-time artist since 2000 and has exhibited regularly in galleries all around South Africa and abroad. Her work can be found in collections at UCT, Durban University of Technology, FNB, SA Breweries, Speer, Vergelegen, Weber Wenzel, Grindrod, Ernie Els Wines, Nando's, and the Mount Nelson, to name a few, as well as in international collections. Jenny, thank you so much for agreeing to chat to us, for sharing your beautiful work, and for inspiring us with your vast experience. Over to you.
Thanks, Sue. So when Sue asked me to do this talk, I was in the process of moving house and actually cities. I was living in Riebeek West, a small town in the Swartland, where I'd been living for 6.5 years. And I had just finished packing up my studio and putting it into storage when Sue asked if I'd do this talk. And I really wanted to do it and decided to do it on plein air painting because that is the practice that I've been able to keep doing while not having a studio. And it's something I've been doing since 2012. I've always had a fascination with it, and I've always worked in my sketchbooks, working outside and feeling that it's absolutely essential to gather your information from the source. I don't really work from photographs. I use them sometimes as a little point of reference if I need it, but physically working from the source in the landscape is really something that works for me when I get back into the studio. So plein air painting felt a little bit intimidating to me, and yeah, I was a bit worried about doing it at first, but launched into it, and I actually just haven't looked back. I love it. And actually looking back, I realize it's something that I do very much in the same way that I do bodies of work in my studio. So I kind of, and slowly gather myself together and then just go for it. So when I'm painting out in the landscape, I tend to do consecutive days. Consecutive day painting is one of my studio practices as well. I tend to carve out patches of time in my life so that I can just keep going. I become what I call a fairly boring person because I turn down social engagements. I don't drink much. I kind of can barely speak at the end of the day. And yeah, that tends to be one of the ways that I do plein air painting, is just total immersion, really. So the term plein air means literally painting out of doors. And it's a relatively new practice in the history of Western painting, in that artists prior to the late 1800s were working very much in their studios. They had assistants who were working grinding their paints, mixing their different emulsions. They had assistants helping them very often. And it was quite a production. And then various artists, I think one of the first was Winslow Homer, set out to paint outdoors. And it really launched itself as a movement when oil paints became available in tubes with the invention of tubes of paint, which suddenly meant that paints could be taken out into the landscape with the artists. And I actually believe that this evolution, if you like, in the act of painting led to quite a lot of individualization and unique ways of looking at things, because it was just the artist and the landscape. They weren't all the kind of grand setup. There wasn't the grand setup of the studio and everything that entailed in terms of it being a business. It suddenly brought it back to very much the individual artist. Lizzie, are we able to start our slideshow? I have a few images. Okay, so this image is a Winslow Homer painting. He's one of my favorite artists, and I actually even named one of my dogs after him. And I've chosen it because it's of other painters' painting. Next one. Again, this one's by Claude Monet, and you can see the quite wild brush mark, very energetic painting. And the next slide. Oh, sorry. This is not the slide I wanted. I think there's one missing. We can just leave it on that. Can you go back, Lizzie? The Impressionists, Monet, Renoir, and Sicily were most inspiring to me, I think, as a plein air painter. I really bonded with the way that they work, and I think it's also the imagery that I grew up with. So for me, it has a certain romance about it. The movement spread all over the world, sort of in the early 1800s. Artists took it up with enthusiasm, and there are schools of plein air painting in Italy, England, America, all over the world. It just launched into a new way of painting. If we can go back to that, the last slide. Not that one, next. And the next. So there's some pretty fabulous painters, contemporary landscape painters that I do want to mention. They kind of take landscape painting up to a whole new level. So this slide is of David Hockney, who makes these huge composite paintings, and admittedly he has a team of dedicated assistants who set these things up and drive him all over the countryside, but he actually stands there and does these paintings. And to me, the sheer physical energy that's required to make just those marks on those size canvases is extraordinary. Lizzie, if you could go back one slide. No, back. Yeah. This is another landscape on plein air painter called Mary Tonkin. She's an Australian, and she works on plein air in the dense bush of her family property in Australia. And what's amazing about her is that she has this huge structure of all her, where she stores all her paints so that the squirrels and things can't get to them. And she leaves everything there and just arrives early the next morning and keeps painting. And that painting in this slide is actually quite small, but she does enormous paintings. They are kind of 2 meters by 4 meters long and all done outdoors in the landscape. So both these artists, Mary Tonkin and David Hockney, if you want to, you can look at amazing videos of them. And what I like is that they're both such amazing people. You get to feel like you're spending time in really good company. So we can have the next slide. And next. Okay, so let's get down to the nitty gritty, which is the materials that I use for painting. I've just got some very ordinary slides of the things that I use. So this is a disposable palette. You can buy them at art shops, and you can see it's clipped onto a palette, like an old-fashioned painter's palette. And you can see where I can put my thumb through the hole, because you are literally standing there holding your palette, and it's really useful to have a good grip, especially when there's a bit of a breeze or you just need to have your paint right on hand. Next slide. That's the back of this little setup showing you how it works. And the next slide. And yeah, I use at least 2 of these, if not 3, at any given time. So one of the things that I've realized about on plein air painting is to have a sense of abundance. And I mean, it's one of my philosophies with painting anyway, is that if you feel that you might run out of something, you're never going to give it your full energy. So I have a lot of palettes. I don't ever want to feel that I haven't got place or space to mix up a new color. So yeah, have a lot of palettes going. Next slide. These are the boards that I paint on, and it's MDF board. It's about, I think, 4 millimeters thick. So it's heavy and solid, but not too heavy. And what you're looking at here is the back of the MDF, because I prime it with very good quality PVA. Next slide. And then I always put on an acrylic primer of a color. So when you're dealing with just the white of the board, you already will be fighting with quite a lot to get your pigments down. Whereas if you put down a primer, you're kind of halfway there already. So the colors I use are a chromatic gray. For this body of work, I've been using a salmon pink, but just very alive. I try and mix in other colors when I'm laying down the color. You can see it's a bit sort of motley, and yeah, there are brush marks evident. Next. This is my own invention with a milk crate from Pick n Pay and dowel rods that I stuck through the little bars. And you can see at the top and the bottom there are dowels. So the next slide will show you how I stack the paintings in the box. And miraculously, my 30 by 35 centimeter paintings fit exactly in a milk crate. I've used this format and this size for way longer than I've been painting on plein air. I use them as just as my sort of working out how to do painting as I go boards. Can show the next slide. So this shows it from the side, where you can see that the boards are at a slight angle. So the bottom rests on the front of the dowel rod, not directly below it, so that they don't flop forwards and backwards. So what might happen with this little system is that your dowel rod will pick up a little bit of paint, but I just do a bit of post-production with that afterwards and fix that. Okay, next slide. These are just some of the miscellaneous materials that I take along. The top left-hand bottle is essentially liquid. It's oil painting medium. And I use quite a lot of that. It just makes my paint flow. I'll show you in a later slide how I put down a rough glaze to start and then work on top of that. And also in the outdoors, it actually makes the paint sticky quite quickly, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing, but I've just learned to work with that. I take along my painting medium in little bottles already poured out, and I'll have, again, abundance, 2 or 3 bottles with medium in so that I can have good clean brushes. And the gloves are just, if things get really messy, I often use them when I'm cleaning up, actually, just so that I don't get paint literally everywhere. Next slide. More essential equipment is a big roll of paper towel and cloths, just lappies, plastic bag to put your, dirty paper towels, and then wet wipes, which are not very environmentally friendly, but I use them sparingly, but boy, when you need one, they're the best thing. I don't know what it is on babies' bottoms that needs that strength of cleanser, but it takes off paint, takes paint off your hands and can do a really good cleanup when you need it. Next slide. No slide. Sue?
Yeah, I think Lizzie, somebody by the name of Neville has tried to do something. So I don't know.
Banish Neville.
Banish Neville, please. Neville's computer has suddenly taken over here. Okay, Lizzie can obviously also see that. Let's see what she does. I love your milk crate. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
It's been such a boon for carrying. Are we back to our slides? Thanks, Lizzie.
Because you don't know what to do with all these wet paintings.
No, exactly. So if we can go back, okay. All right, so those essential things. Then the next slide is the oil painting medium. That's just a close-up of the label of the oil painting medium that I use. There are quite a few of these on the market. I think one of them is called Zest It. And although it's biodegradable and everything, I never ever would put it in the environment. It's just that it's a lot more user-friendly than turpentine. Next slide. So I use a big plastic box, one of those big gym crates to carry my paints. So on the bottom of this box, you can see all the paints. I just tumble them in. I like to rummage. And on the left, at the top left of the crate is a bottle of my turps. So I often manage to fit quite a lot in that part of the box. Next. This is the top layer, the little tray, and yeah, it's where I keep brushes, earbuds, toothpicks for picking out bits of grass or things, and my palette knives. Next. This little gizmo I use in my studio as well as on Plein Air Painting, and the lovely thing is that it collapses. The next slide will show you how it works. So it holds your brushes. And again, with painting, abundance is key here, because you do not want to be cleaning your brushes all the time. Literally rather have 5 brushes of the same size than using one brush of that size and cleaning it all the time, because you'll just waste your time, you'll waste your paint. It doesn't work. So one of the things I have learned is just have a lot of brushes. You can show the next slide. Here you can see that I've got big brushes on the left. So bearing in mind that my boards are only 30 by 35 centimeters, these brushes are quite big. You can see next to those big ones are some flatties and then some rounds. Next slide. And then some filbert paintings in various sizes, but you can see I've got quite a lot of each size. And yeah, I often end up using all of my brushes just because I need to use it for another color. Next. These are some softer brushes. In the middle is a bunch of rigger brushes, which work pretty well for little fine details. But I must say, again, in the sense of abundance, is that I tend to have a rule that I always use a brush that's at least twice the size that I think I should be using. It's the only way I can get action happening on the canvas. So these little brushes are more for tiny dots and stripes and details. You'll see in my paintings when I show you later that they kind of just add the little details at the end. Next. Again, an abundance of palette knives. Next. This just shows the medium. So I'll have a crate in the car with kind of backup stuff, but I try to make everything so that I can carry it myself, because often I'll need to be quite far away from the car. If I'm trekking into Kirstenbosch or up a mountain or something, you need to be able to carry everything. Next one. So back to the story of the Impressionists having paint in tubes. I managed to source empty tubes, and before I go out plein air painting, as I said, I build up a bit of a head of steam, and I'll be looking at the environment and absorbing and thinking. Sometimes go out and go and do some drawings. Sometimes I'll go and drive around just as a recce, just to check where I could go. And then I'll come back to the studio and mix up various colors. So you'll see the next slide is a selection of colors that are mixed up for this kind of spring in the Swartland, the last body of work that I've just done. Next slide. This is something that I found quite invaluable too, is mixing white. It's just much softer and more fluid than your tube of normal titanium white. And yeah, I tend to just go through quite a lot of that. Next one. And that's my kit ready to go. With that, I will often have a backpack. And that stuff that's in the red crate often goes into the backpack. So if I'm walking somewhere deep, I will put all the boards into the crate with the dowel rods, so even though they're unpainted, and I'll strap my easel, my fold-up easel, onto the back of my backpack, and all the rest goes into the backpack. And I'll sometimes have a basket over my arm, and I often feel totally like a pack horse. And sometimes, especially when I've finished painting, I'll make 2 trips back to the car. I'll leave everything there and just surrender to the fact that it's going to take twice as long, and I'll just carry things back slowly. So next slide. I've just got a few slides of my easel situation, painting out in the landscape. This is at a farm called Alice Verloren in the Swartland. Next. And that is at Silvermine Dam. Next one. This is also out in the Swartland. Next. This is the last job that I've just done, which was on Goedgedacht farm on the back side of the mountain in Riebeek West. It was a commission to do a series of paintings for them. And this was one of the areas where I worked. Next one. This is a painting of me coming up with a plan, because I only had 3 days. I had booked myself in to stay there for 3 days, and the wind was howling. It was quite brutal, actually. So I tied my easel down with a rock. I just hung it between the tripods, and it really worked. To the point where I actually think I might do that all the time, because it gives your easel a lot of weight and allows you to kind of work quite heavily onto the board. Next. This is just one of those things that happens on plein air painting. So I'd parked my car in this very narrow valley and had just set myself up and was just getting on with it when this tractor came trundling up with 10 guys on the back, and they wanted to get past, and there was absolutely no way past. Anyway, after much negotiation and me saying that I would reverse up this very rutted road, they conceded and said they would walk to the place where they had to work. So I was pretty grateful. Next one. So this is painting in that valley, and this slide is of the first layer of paint that I'll put down onto my tinted board. These are very much washes, but using liquid, not much terps. Because if I use too much terps, it's just too runny and too wet, whereas the liquid starts to dry quite quickly. So when I say liquid, I mean the oil painting medium, which is an alkyd medium. Next. That's me in situ. That's on the other side of my car, reaching the end of that painting. And the next one, I think is, yeah, that's the finished painting. And you can see there's still bugs in the top right-hand corner, michies and things get stuck in the paint. The trick with michies and insects is to leave them. Don't try and get them out, because you'll just destroy your painting. You have to let the poor little guys die on the painting, and then you just brush them off with minimal damage. So that's those slides. Are we back to my screen? Okay, so when I decided to engage with plein air painting, I had been talking about it for a few years before actually getting down to it. And one of the people I chatted to was my friend Kathy Lazelle, who's a very good painter. And she had done quite a lot of plein air painting in Norfolk in England and also in France. And I eventually got her to agree to come with me. I, for some reason, needed some moral support. And we trekked off into Kirstenbosch, and I did my first series of oil paintings out in the bush. And I just felt like I'd hit heaven. I was very, very excited about it. So Lizzie, if we can look at that first series of slides. So while Lizzie's getting the slides, I'm going to talk about just things that I've discovered. Okay, that's literally the first plein air painting that I did, standing up in Kirstenbosch. Didn't really know what I was doing and just went into it. I think on that day I did 4 paintings on my 30 by 35s. So what I did learn is that it takes a huge amount of energy and focus to paint outdoors. You're dealing with so many things, so many factors, and not to mention the fact that oil paint itself is quite tricky, really. It's a difficult medium in that it's kind of gets everywhere. Well, maybe that's just me, but it's, yeah, there's just a lot going on. So when I do lug all my stuff out into the landscape, I try and make the most of the situation, in that I haven't gone to all that effort for nothing. So I really want to come home with some paintings. Having said that, embracing the idea of failure when you set out to do the painting is actually the only way that I can approach doing a plein air painting, any painting actually. If one doesn't embrace the possibility of failure, one doesn't do anything risky. You know, I just don't take any risks, and I try and control too much. So I think this painting does show that I was really at sea with what I was doing. But I got very excited when I'd finished that painting. Scroll down. That's, I think, the second one, looking down one of the pathways at Kirstenbosch. And next, that's on that same day. I think the clouds came in, and it's looking up at Castle Rock. Next one. This is still Kirstenbosch with silverleaf trees. And I think, again, I was so excited by the idea of painting that I went back the next day. I just went back to the studio, dumped everything, and came back early the next morning and carried on. Next. So I think that's the next morning, carrying on Restios and the views out over Kirstenbosch. And then after that, you can scroll down. After that, I went to Silvermine Nature Reserve. Again, a place that I absolutely love. Oh, this is still Kirstenbosch. I think Silvermine comes next. Yeah. So around the dam at Silvermine, there's lovely picnic places, and I set myself up there at one of the picnic tables and painted the foliage and things in front of the dam. Next. It's one of the pathways leading to the dam. Another little aloe. I actually gave this painting to my brother, and a friend of his visited him, and my brother's a botanist, and a botanist friend visited him and looked at that painting and said, oh, that's a whatever aloe. It only grows next to Silvermine Dam in the Cape. Now, my brother lives in KZN, so it's not that this person would know. So I felt quite thrilled that my painting had botanical accuracy, which is not something I try for. I just paint what I respond to. Next one. These were king proteas flowering next to the dam, bit of a rock star moment. That's the dam with a few ruffles of wind on it. And next. Okay, so this is now another body of work. And you can see I'm a little more confident, I think, not so much at sea. This is after I'd moved to the Riebeek Valley, and it was autumn, and I just decided to do a plein air painting project. I did quite a lot of paintings in this series. I think there were about 20 of them. So I'm not going to show them all to you. I just chose some of them. So that's the sort of autumn fields. That's a row of trees on a farm. Also late summer. Again, farmlands up against the mountain. This was out quite far away from Riebeek West, where I lived, out in the fields looking back at the Kasteelberg. And there were quite dramatic clouds. So yeah, you can see in this painting the big brush marks, especially with the clouds, and an attempt to kind of really block things in. Because bearing in mind that it's quite hot out there, sometimes the wind is picking up, and the sense of urgency is a big part of the plein air painting practice to me. Next one. Again, yeah, autumn fields in the Swartland. And next, that's a dam that was covered in water weeds. I think that's not the last, carry on. Yeah. Again, looking back at Riebeek West. Yeah, also shifting light, I think, is something that's the plein air painter's constant kind of excitement and challenge. Yeah. So that's, I think that's slideshow. I don't think there are any more, Lizzie. And if we can start the next, is that the next slideshow? Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about responding to the environment in painting outdoors. I think the chief thing that one's dealing with when you're painting outside is change. Everything is changing all the time, which we know philosophically is true, but we try and halt that. And in fact, even the attempt to pin down a painting is an attempt to prevent change, really, in that you want to capture that one tiny moment. But everything's changing around you, and it's quite a challenge to remain solid and focused, and just to really engage with the materials and stay grounded, really. Thanks, Lizzie. So this is also painting out in the Swartland. I think for this body of work really got me in touch with the landscape that I'd just moved into. And from these works, I then went on to do quite a big series of studio paintings. I'll talk a bit about that just now, about how plein air painting can feed your studio practice. Next one. This is a later stage in the year. I think just as sort of winter was coming. Next. And this is up on the mountain in Riebeek West, where there was some lovely patches of fynbos, which I'm always very drawn to. Quite a almost kitsch painting looking down over the village of Riebeek Kasteel. So I sat up on one of the farmers' fields and looked down. Next. Also, this is also looking down onto Riebeek West. This is above Riebeek West. Yeah, next one. There was an old station in Riebeek West that's not used anymore. And in fact, it also shows how painting can actually hold history, because that building doesn't exist anymore. It's just now derelict. And this was only a few years ago. It was the most delightful little building, and it's now gone. This is also from that same field, looking down onto the sports field in Riebeek Kasteel. This painting was painted mostly from memory. So you can see the landscape is a little bit swept over, but every time that I went out in the evening to paint, it would start getting too dark and the sky would do this incredible evening thing. So I had to try and capture it. And next. Now you can see the different seasons as well. This was a very hot, very hot day. And I tried to capture that sort of almost blistering heat. It's actually one of the challenges of being outdoors is your physical body is your strength and your weakness in a way. So it's a tricky thing to keep hydrated. I find that I just do drink a hell of a lot of water. And then, of course, I have to find bushes behind which to go and wee. It's also important to bring snacks so that you keep your strength up. I have often a ravening hunger after painting. And the clothing that I wear is always my oldest painting clothes, right down to my shoes, so that I can just really relax and the paint can get everywhere. Yeah, and of course a hat is essential, sunscreen. This was also that very hot day. Oh, and then I started painting my garden. I think it just got too painful out there, away from comfort. And yeah, I've had a beautiful garden in Riebeek West. So this is the vegetable garden with spring onions and things in the foreground. And yellow irises flowering. And yeah, the end of the dietes. This was just way more comfortable to come back to paint at home, although I was out in the garden. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this body of work was one of my most successful painting trips, in that I felt like I made breakthroughs with my oil painting, my plein air painting. I booked one of those eco cottages at Kochelberg Nature Reserve, and my husband and I went and stayed there. I think it was only about 3 or 4 nights. I remember working pretty hard. I got up early in the morning and went out and captured the morning light, and then would kind of lie down and relax in the heat of the day, and then go out again in the afternoon. That's kind of the model of plein air painting right back through history. And in fact, the romance of the Impressionists in my mind is that they did that. They went out early and then snoozed and drank wine and probably got up to all sorts of mischief during the middle of the day, and then went out and painted again. Next one. Yeah, so these are all different times of the day, and just really going out into the landscape. My husband did all the cooking and feeding and things, so it was a really lovely retreat, actually, where I could just focus very much on painting. I think this was very early morning, where the mountains were still quite deeply shadowed. This was the fynbos in front of our cottage, so it doesn't even have a horizon line. And again, more fynbos. This was the valley looking up. We actually walked up over that mountain through over into the nature reserve on the other side in Betty's Bay. And I must say, I remember when I did this painting that I just felt it hadn't worked. I thought it was a complete disaster. And I think it should be one of the rules of plein air painting is not to judge too much while you're doing it. I think there's often so much there that you're trying to capture that when you try and judge and hold back and change things too much, you don't really get anywhere. So this painting I remember really struggling with, and it was only the next day when I saw it that I thought, oh, this painting actually worked. So yeah, a lot to be learned. And I think that also applies to studio painting. Is if you manage to lose yourself in the paint and the brush, don't assess it until, could be a week later or a month later, it doesn't matter. But yeah, try not to judge. Next one. This was also the capturing of light on the hills in the afternoon as the sun was setting. And that as well. So while we're just scrolling through these, I'll talk about how the practice of plein air painting informed my my studio practice. I think being out there and being very connected to what is in front of me and having to find quick ways of putting it down enabled me to find marks that I could then transport back into the studio. So taking a small canvas, a small board like this, and then moving back into the studio, I'd already kind of done a lot of the work, really. And a lot of the paintings in the studio, I could even turn upside down and just paint the marks. This little painting was the river valley next to our cottage, and it's got all that bracken at the bottom, and I just got very into the kind of intricacies of the marks and things. So the paintings all show exploration, I think. They show me really trying to find out what's going on. And I think it is one of the things that I love about plein air painting, is that it really is a seeking and trying to be present in what I see. So the next batch of slides. With this one, I'm going to talk a little bit about painting under lockdown. It feels to me as if plein air painting has really taken off. I don't know if it's just because I am more aware of it suddenly, or whether it is just something that more people are doing. It certainly feels like a COVID-friendly activity because it's outdoors. And the other thing about plein air painting is that it is really lovely to do with other people. So in South Africa, we have the element of safety, and I really try not to get too neurotic about that without being stupid. You know, you've got to find a spot where you can lose yourself in the paint without looking over your shoulder. So places like nature reserves, or very rural areas that where you know the environment, or friends' farms or small holdings. Just find places where you feel safe. I love painting in the city as well, actually, and having just moved back to the city, I'm super keen to find spots to go and do on plein air painting in the city. But that I must say is a whole lot more challenging. One of the things I love about Cape Town is the meeting of nature and urban and industry all together, and the way that they intersect and cross each other. It's one of the things that I'm very keen to explore further. So these paintings were done in Riebeek West this year, actually, earlier this year. And I started a little WhatsApp group in my community with the artists that I knew that had expressed interest. And we would just post to each other and say where we were going to be and drop a pin. And we actually had a hell of a lot of fun doing this. Sometimes no one would turn up, and that was fine. Sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 of us. But I think just the sense of camaraderie and the sense of commitment, of having put it down that you were going to be there at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, really works well for me. The other thing about painting in groups is that just as you're starting to flag, or you're starting to think, oh, I'm going to pack it in, it's not going well, you kind of glance across at somebody painting next to you and you go, oh, look what they're doing. You know, let's just keep going. Let's try another bit. So yeah, it's a good thing to do in groups. This painting is done on a farm in Riebeek West called Brandweg Farm, and I learned a bit of a lesson on this trip, because I had gone off and set myself up on this farm. It was actually just next to the main road, but I'd found a bit of a hilltop. And this very irate farmer came and scaled me out for not asking permission, and I had to just apologize, and it kind of ruined the painting day. I had fortunately just finished this painting, but there was no ways I could do another one. He did say I could stay, but I chose not to. After that, I always ask the farmers, although I had done a bit of that already, but it's just polite actually to ask people if you can paint on their property. Next one. Now, this is a farm called Alles Verloren again, which was just around the corner from me, and looks back into Riebeek West, the village. So I enjoyed that aspect of the houses and the farm and the vineyards. Next one. Now, this was one of our group sessions where we all met early in the morning at a particular spot, and the mist came in and literally obliterated the landscape. And as all we could see was what was in front of us, right in front of us. So in this painting, you can see I've engaged very much more with the fine details of the grasses and the little branches and things. Next one. This is from a more elevated position in Riebeek Kasteel up on the Botmaskloof Pass. This is a little group of labourers' cottages, which I'd always loved. It was on the trip that we would go on our bike rides, and I'd always cycle up this hill. So it took a long time past these little cottages. So it was lovely to go back and paint them. And I've actually kept this painting. My husband loved it. So we've kept it as a record and a memory of our time in Riebeek West. Next one. Also looking out over the valley. I think that's very early morning, so there's still mist. Yeah, big mist bank over the Riebeek Valley. That was another moment when the mist rolled in and everything disappeared. And I just squeezed out a hell of a lot of white paint and fiddled around. Yeah. And that was tending towards autumn, just before we left the valley, actually. So this painting is of Goedgedacht Farm, which is a job I've just done. The trustees wanted a series of paintings to present to various important people in their community, people who are connected to the farm. So I spent a few days working there. This is the painting in the windy gully where I had to tie down my easel with a rock. And the final one over the dam. Thanks, Lizzie. So just talking about painting, Sue suggests.
Yeah.
Sue said that a lot of the members of the Constantiaberg Art Society are working plein air, and yeah, as I said, it does seem to be something that people are doing, and I suggest getting groups together to do it in safety in numbers. There's some really good local painters who are doing it. Follow them on Instagram. I found one called Mark D'Alessio. I think he's Italian, but he has been to Cape Town and done some lovely paintings. There's Alice Toish. She does really lovely plein air work, as well as Joanna Lee Miller. And yeah, follow them on Instagram and keep looking and connecting, I think.
Yeah, okay. Jenny, yeah, there's a group that meets on a Monday. If anybody that's listening is also keen, that anybody can join in with, and they go to different venues all over Cape Town.
Wonderful.
And I think it's absolutely wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for the safety aspect of things, that we can't go and sit on our own in a deserted spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you finished? Yeah.
Yeah, I think if people want to ask questions.
Yeah, there are comments coming through about your, well, I just want to say that you capture the seasons and the light and the heat and everything that we have here in the Cape so incredibly well. And I think it's the colors that you use that are just absolutely fantastic. I love all your paintings. I'd be very happy with any of them in my home.
Thank you.
Jenny, yeah, inspiring. Irvine said inspiring colors and technique. Thank you. Sorry to leave. Megan said, thank you so much, Jenny. It's wonderful to be able to join in and see what you're doing. Lots of love from the USA.
Oh, that's my friend Megan.
Yeah, and Judy said such an inspirational talk. Thank you so much. And Kathy J said your colors are so wonderfully fresh and crisp. How do you keep them so clean when you're working fast? Okay.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Let me answer that. So again, it's the abundance of palettes. You know, don't limit your space to mix a new color. When I'm painting, and this applies to the studio and plein air painting, the minute I feel lazy about color, I need to either rein myself in or I need to stop. So the minute I kind of think, oh, actually it's a cerulean blue here, but let me just use this because it's on my palette. Let me use this, whatever blue is there. And the minute I start feeling that, I'm losing it. So I've got to be absolutely in tune with the color. And I think that's part of it, is being quite pedantic really about the color. And then of course the brushes, what I said about having many brushes is that if you've got one brush that you're just using for your blues, you know, so you've got one round, one big fat one, a nice big filbert, and then one, let's say a smaller round, and those are only for your blues. You can use your tissue paper, you know, your big roll of paper, to just wipe the brush clean, and then you can use a different blue, but don't change to a green now or a red. You know, keep your brushes. Yeah, just keep your brushes for those colors, and I think that is the secret to keeping clean colors. Just keeping the color groups separate, really.
Okay, because I think, it's definitely your colors. Win Rousseau has also sent a message to say thank you, Jenny, for sharing so much with us this evening. Absolutely gorgeous paintings. Hang on, it's going to... everyone capturing light, color, and atmosphere in a most extraordinary way. Just love your work. That's from Win Rousseau.
Thank you, Win.
Okay, Kathy J said, great, thanks. I am intrigued. I'm just trying to get, I am intrigued by your mantra of abundance. That's from Kathy J. Sandra Mahue said, thanks, Jenny. Great to see you again and great insights. Sorry, I don't think I've said that surname correctly.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Oh, did I? Okay, good. Okay, and Mary, amazing to see. Loved it. Thank you. Gabby, me too. Thanks for sharing and informing me. Love from Bavaria, Germany. Okay, there we go. Adele Galgut says, thank you, Jenny, sharing so generously with us. You are an authentic and outstanding artist. Inspirational. Abundance is the way forward. I think that's, I think we've all learned a lot this evening, and you've certainly inspired us to get out and enjoy what we've got around us here. You know, we really are so spoiled to live in such a magnificent place, and never nothing to paint.
Well, exactly. There's an abundance of material too. It's all there for us.
Fantastic. And if anybody wants to see more of your work, to have a look on your website, I know I've had a good look. There's some fantastic work there. To re-look at any of these paintings that you've shown us this evening. And join in with the plein air groups if you're keen. And,
thank you, I will.
And lovely idea also to go away somewhere, you know, with a group of you to actually at Kuchelberg or something to paint, a whole group of artists together. Yes. There are more comments coming through here. Jenny, somebody wants to know about upcoming classes or workshops. And Gina Niederhumer said, hi, Jenny, thank you for this wonderful talk. Do you make a few on each outdoor setting? Yes, I think that,
I do. Yeah. I think the most paintings I've ever made on one outdoor was about 5, which nearly killed me because one is very, very exhausted after that. But it's lovely to just push it. Sometimes that last painting, when you've been out there and you kind of think, oh, I've still got all this paint on the palette, let me just go for it. And often that last painting is the one, you know.
Is the one. Okay. Okay. And Karen asked, do you get permission to paint at Kirstenbosch, or can you just go?
No, you just go. I think they have a lockdown thing, or a sort of COVID thing, that you're not allowed to bring picnicky things in at the moment. But I kind of just said, no, I'm working, because they thought I was bringing in picnic stuff.
Okay. Okay.
So it might not work in a group. They might not want you camping out in a group. I'm not sure. But I've never had to ask permission in Kirstenbosch. You just go and paint. Yeah.
Go and paint. Yeah. You do need to have permission to paint on Table Mountain.
Do you?
Yes, we do. You do. The rangers will come and stop you for some obscure reason, but we do have a permission letter, and I know that the South African Society of Artists also have. If anybody wants to paint on Table Mountain, we've got permission.
Thank you. That's good to know. I will join you.
Chase you away. Yeah.
Wow.
Jenny, do you ever do workshops or classes or anything?
I have done. I don't often do them now at the moment, and I haven't done for quite a few years, but people are always asking, and I do love doing it. So having moved back to Cape Town now, there's more chance of that. And the best thing to do is join my mailing list on my website. Just sign up. It's very easy. And then you will get, you'll get notification if I do any classes.
Okay, I think that's wonderful. So if anybody's interested in anything, to join your mailing list. And
I don't send out many mails. It's literally just if I'm having a show or something important. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And any exhibitions coming up or?
Not. I don't even have a studio at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
I've got another plein air painting project that I'm doing at Bartholomew's Klip, a farm out in the Swartland. Oh, wow. Yeah, so I'll be doing that, and then I will need to get a studio to finish that project. Yeah. Okay,
wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jenny. That was fabulous. Fantastic evening, and I hope I know everybody's enjoyed that and feeling very inspired.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Lizzie.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.